What's up, guys? This is Chit Chat with Joshua at a little bit past midnight. Today, I'll be discussing sex. No, not the birds and the bees, but something that has become far more sensitive: gender. We've all heard the statement that women can do anything a man can do, and vice versa. However, this isn't exactly true. I mean, either gender can certainly attempt to do any activity, but their actual efficiency at a said task can vary between the sexes, and this is certainly not due to some blanket excuse of sexism. Today, I'll try to clearly outline the exact differences between the sexes. Today, there's a very high chance that I'll be bashed for being sexist, but those keyboard warriors are only proving exactly how uneducated they are. But now, I feel the need to leave a disclaimer. So, disclaimer alert: subsequently, when I refer to males, or really either of the genders, when I say male, what I'm actually saying is that males on average. Capiche? Alright then, moving on. To the average person, other than one's reproductive organs, males and females would be seen as rather similar, and actually, they would be right. This is because males and females are actually more alike than different. But when you add up all the small differences between males and females, the differences become more massive at the extreme ends of the curve. And with individuals that are often discussed in mainstream media actually being at the extremes of either end of the gender spectrum, be it for a good or bad reason, I feel this is an important comparison to make. So now, I'll be expanding on the main differences between the sexes based on solid psychology literature that is rather well documented. So to begin, I'll first discuss physical differences that occurs during puberty. Once puberty has occurred, males tend to become larger and stronger, especially with relation to upper body strength. When human beings fight, their fights tend to historically be dominated by punches, and with males having larger upper body strength and having a larger weight, they tend to be able to land more devastating punches as they step through the punch with substantial muscle and weight behind it. Now, when you look at physical altercations in marriages, surprisingly to some anyways, it is known that women tend to actually attack their husbands more often than their husbands attack their wives. So why is it that that's the case? Well, assuming all other variables are constant, which to our econ viewers known as ceteris paribus or ceteris paribus, or however you wish to pronounce it, and if you take into account the likelihood that in the relationship either party, husband or wife, at times did get upset, it is likely that a shorter woman with relatively less body strength, probability of doing serious damage in a fight is very low as compared to a husband. In fact, it's likely that the woman is only capable of doing severe, permanent damage if she chooses to use an object like a kitchen knife. But if the roles were reversed and the husband hits the wife and really hits her, the results are likely to be far more devastating. As such, women can be more physically aggressive in minor ways because both the husband and the wife know that the consequences of said act are way more limited when committed by the wife. As such, while men can potentially do more serious damage to a woman in a physical altercation in marriages, it is still the women who tend to be more aggressive in relationships. Now, moving on to personality and temperament differences between the sexes. I'll be discussing 3 different categories, namely agreeableness, neuroticism, and personal interests. So firstly, we'll be looking at agreeableness. Agreeableness is typically manifested in the form of one's compassion, politeness, meekness, and even their gentle nature. This is why statistically, despite women actually attempting suicide way more than men tend to die more often via suicide because men tend to be more willing to carry out the necessary aggressive action to end their lives. Disagreeable people tend to be tough-minded as opposed to being polite. They tend to be competitive and they won't do anything unless they want to. So these individuals tend to behave in an aggressive, predatory manner with a desire to win in anything they attempt. As such, these individuals tend to care less about a person's feelings and emotions and are much more focused and interested in a person's accomplishments. The above traits tend to be predominantly associated with men based on statistical and empirical data. This is substantiated by the fact that the people in prison tend to be the most aggressive of the aggressive. Hence, as expected, 90% of inmates are males. Secondly, I will now discuss neuroticism, which is essentially negative emotion and how it plays out between the sexes. Women tend to experience negative emotion far more than men, with this being affirmed by how overrepresented they are in cases with regards to anxiety and depression. So, the question now is, why do women tend to experience said emotions more frequently? Well, a possible reason for this is that the world is far more dangerous for women, and as such, they are more likely to experience fear and negative emotions on a regular basis. So what do I mean by the world being more dangerous for women? Am I sexist? Of course not. Please. Of course I'm not sexist. So what do I mean then? So let me qualify. Well, there is the potential physical danger that women face from men, which I briefly spoke about earlier. And I highlighted that was potential danger, simply because of the size and upper body strength that men tend to gain during puberty. In addition, women tend to be more sexually vulnerable after puberty. Now, let me explain why I said women tend to be more sexually vulnerable after puberty. I say this because if a man has an unwanted sexual encounter, he tends to walk away with little visible difference. However, if a woman had an unwanted sexual encounter and gets pregnant, the repercussions, especially in a more conservative and traditional society, is very intense. Societal and familial pressure is overwhelming, and as such, women are likely to be more nervous about the reactions of these individuals. On top of this, upon having a child, mothers tend to do the vast majority of parenting of a child under 9 months old. Watching over these very delicate, screaming, even annoying babies tends to be a very tiring task and exacts an enormous toll. Another potential reason why women could be said to experience anxiety and depression more often than men is because they tend to be less willing to take part in a very intense argument that will result in them being hurt emotionally and yet solve issues in the short term. As such, their worries just tend to build up and snowball over time, resulting in heightened levels of stress and anxiety. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not saying that women are the only one who face such issues and that women are some sort of creature that is swamped and clothed in negativity. In fact, men too have their fair share of troubles. I mean, this is clearly substantiated and seen in how males tend to be overrepresented in cases with regards to substance abuse, alcohol abuse, antisocial behavior, learning disorders, and even attention deficient disorders. Lastly, in this analysis between males and females, we'll be now looking at personal interests and how they tend to differ between males and females. Quite simply, based on statistics, men tend to be more interested in things, while women tend to be more interested in people. It's just as simple as that. That is why the vast majority of engineers are male and the majority of females are nurses. This is the biggest difference that one can find between males and females. Thus, a man has to be more interested in people than 85% of the male population, such that he is as interested in people as the 50th percentile of females, and vice versa, of course. So now that we have gone through a mammoth of information, The final question is whether these differences are biological or sociocultural. Luckily enough, an experiment has been conducted to determine exactly that. It involved a study done on thousands of individuals across a multitude of countries, and it was found that a society became richer and more egalitarian, like those Scandinavian countries, where equality of outcome has been pushed. The intrinsic differences between the sexes became more pronounced, not less. This was actually the exact opposite of what was expected. Hence, it is a well-documented and clearly substantiated fact that the differences between males and females tend to be biological as opposed to sociocultural. Phew! That was one hell of a content blast. I don't know about you, but I'm drained. But once again, thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to what I have to say on this topic. The comment section is empty and it's just waiting for you to leave your thoughts. As usual, I'll reply to every single one of you. So feel free to hit me up with whatever's on your mind. Till next time, this is Chit Chat with Joshua, and good night.